Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to That's Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
David Rios.
How you doing?
And Kasisi Harris.
Hey, everybody.
And tonight we're going to be talking about everything you need to know to get started writing comics. So the last couple of weeks we grilled David and Jose. This week they get to grill Kasisi and myself. So it should be a good one, and I'll try not to put my MFA hat on for too long. But if you're a long-time listener of the show, you know that I get lost in my thesis sometimes. But before we get into that, let's check in with our hosts. How was everyone's week? Did you play, watch, read, or listen to anything new that you think is worth talking about?
I think I played any... Oh, no, that's not true. Well, no. I guess I played it before. Went back to DC Universe Online just to check it out.
Is it still alive?
I know. It is, though. It is still alive, though.
Okay. How's the experience getting back into it in 2024?
Because you set your expectations lower.
Yeah.
It's okay, right? Because you're not playing it to get the same thing you would out of World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy. You're just kind of having fun with it and seeing what you could do. So I thought it was kind of, refreshing. It's not something that I'm going to spend hours and countless hours doing, but it's fun to just bounce in and do it, take your mind off something.
That's what you say until you start playing.
Right, yeah. It's okay. It's nice.
Yeah. Jose, how about you?
I started watching Rebel Moon, the show on Netflix or whatever. Other than that, just been working. I finished one of the books I was working on today, so I was pretty excited about that, and I can start hopping on commissions for a little bit, and then back to work again.
Nice.
All right, Pops. All right, cool. David, and yourself?
Just working and just reading some books here and there as time permitted. I finished up the X-Men: The Hidden Years series.
Okay. Nice.
That I was going through. So yeah, just some miscellaneous books here and there.
Okay.
Oh, did get caught up on X-Men 97 though. I
Nice.
Binge it all.
Such a good show.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it put you in your feels? Don't lie. Don't lie.
You know
it did.
Yes, but I'm still expecting. Like I need more.
Right.
I'm still waiting on. I feel like if you haven't seen it yet, the Ignis fight for Solo Level and Kasisi, the Ignis fight is what'll sell you on it.
Really? Okay, yeah. I might have to watch it then.
Yeah. This week I got back into Guilty Gear Strive. Still been playing a lot of that. Kind of my go-to fighting game since like Double X back on the Game Boy Color. So I saw Strive was on sale on the Microsoft Store for like half off with the collector's edition. So I figured might as well. And I actually managed to win some games online, which winning a fighting game online is hard as crap when you're getting back into it. Outside of that, just been reading Gundam Thunderbolt, which is one of the, I believe they have like DVD movies, but it's one of the weird Gundam series that existed only as a manga for the longest time. They didn't actually have a TV show for it. So I've been enjoying that. Okay. So like I said, tonight we're talking about everything needed to get started writing comics. So of course, I'm sure Kasisi and I have our thoughts, but kind of like how we prompted you guys the last couple of weeks. I know sometimes Jose and David, you need extra prompting. I know that Jose did take time to write some questions down, so I'll let you start the conversation. You're currently muted, by the way, Jose.
How about now? I did write questions down. There. Hopefully they make sense. So if you're ready for me to like lay it on you. And this is for both of you to answer respectfully. All right. So first off, I wanted to ask first to tell everyone a little bit about your experience as a writer.
This is the general experience about it?
Yes. Like kind of what got you into writing, what have you done?
Okay.
You want me to go first, or you probably? Mine will probably be a lot shorter than yours, Tim. So,
Sure.
I guess we've always been writing in some capacity. At least I have, right? Yep. And so when I think about me, I'm a very introverted guy, and I actually prefer to communicate in writing. It took me a long time to communicate outside of that. So that's just in general me practicing writing. But then as I got older, I wanted to become better at that thing. So, you go through school, you take a few courses, got my first degree. But when I went back again to school, I wanted to focus on writing. So that took me to Full Sail to get a writing degree. And that's really when I was exposed to writing comics. Before, I had never really, you kind of place that in a whole different world of folks who can do that thing. But taking the course, I was like, oh man, I like this. This is kind of the bridge to visual storytelling that I can afford to get into before animation. So that's kind of what got me into writing comics. And publish minor stuff here and there, right? So there's a few anthologies I'm published in for other stuff, prose stuff. Wrote a few of my own comics that are out there for free. I don't really sell them at this time. I'm kind of cooking what I want to kind of work the convention circuit with. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay.
All right. Before you start,
yeah.
Tim, did you just say that you went to Full Sail? Dave, you need to sign up. I think all of us have been to Full Sail, but you. Maybe.
No, I've never been to Full Sail.
Oh, gotta get you in for at least a little class at least once, so we can say we've all been to Full Sail.
Well, yeah. The next time we get everyone down to Orlando for a convention, we'll have to have Roland get us all day passes or something. So
Right.
I know as alumni we can get a day pass for anytime we want to, but I'll get one for Dave and just walk him around campus.
Yeah, I've been to Florida twice, and since doing the Silverline stuff, and I never seem to be able to get a hookup time or anything to connect with Roland, or I was hoping to connect with Tommy and see Kablam and stuff, but just wasn't able to work that this last time either. So maybe the third time's the charm.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I'll jump right in. Similar to Kasisi, I've always taken to writing or some form of storytelling. And even now in my day job, I much prefer to handle every communication through email as opposed to phone call. So if I can go my entire relationship with a vendor without hearing their voice, that's a perfect vendor relationship for me. I started writing this kind of weird runoff stories and fan fictions, mostly focused around World of Warcraft. Or I guess it was Warcraft 3 at the time, in middle school. And then when the high school started learning about practicing writing a lot of stuff that'll never see the light of day. But then I got into the theater program. And fell in love with that as like another form of storytelling. I actually lettered in high school in theater, which is something you can do. So if you want to get a letterman jacket but hate sports, go into theater band. And part of that was script writing, so learning how to write scripts for theater, which writing the stage play is interesting art, way different than like anything else. And then taking some of that to like regional and then national competitions, and so actually like acknowledged at national level for theater work was part of that experience. Going on into college, I originally was looking at going into computer science, thinking I was going to like work on like server maintenance or something like that. And then quickly realized that I hate discrete math and everything related to it. I like working in C++ and Ruby, but I hate discrete math. So I transitioned out into I was looking at other schools at the time. Discovered Full Sail and was going there for writing. And that's also when I had that similar moment where I had the realization that like, oh yeah, people get paid to make comics.
Yeah.
Like that is someone's job is to write a comic.
Right.
And so I sort of began doing dual specialization with my skill set from that point on, focusing on writing comics at the same time, also learning how to write creative copy because I knew I would need to have a day job. So for all my portfolio pieces, whenever they have a chance to do both, I do both, a comic script and I forgot what they called it. I think it's like professional writing or like copy, like professional copy was like the categories under.
Right.
Thankfully I did, because after college I got a job as a copywriter and that covered my nut. And I rode that train all the way to the top of it, my marketing department. But in the meantime, I started also cranking out short fiction because if you're a writer starting out, the easiest market to navigate is short fiction. And then that's also one of those things you can let spiral out of control until you get featured in a magazine in the Netherlands. So I ended up winning like the artist showcase and Spine and Tap out of the Netherlands.
Nice.
So I have a bunch of short fiction pieces that are floating around in different journals and at libraries and such. Ended up working on a few indie movies as a script doctor. It's like Happy Death Day, Patient Zero, things like that. And then Roland reached back out to me because he needed a submissions editor and knew that I was still working in writing and still like comics. And then proceeded to leverage that into me writing and not being as much of an editor anymore.
Gotcha. Blackmail.
Yeah. I mean, that's my advice for anyone who wants to get a job in writing, is like writing at like an agency or something like that. Is like, well, first sign up as their accountant or sign up as like something else. Like, it's a lot easier to get started at Marvel in their accounts payable division than it is in their artist bullpen. But when they're looking for someone in the artist bullpen, if they know that's Dave in accounts payable also inks, they're like, all right, move them over.
That's a tip, guys. Listen here, buddy. All right. My next question. Oh, thank you for that, by the way. I didn't know about you having other stuff in the Netherlands and whatnot. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look you up more.
Well, it's because I mean, you just like if you have an agent who shotguns it for you, or you find an aggregator and you start shotgunning your submissions yourself, and then all of a sudden, like you realize, like, one of the submissions come back with like a .de prefix, and you get paid in it wasn't Kronar, but it's like that. And you have to like do like the weird conversion through PayPal. Like, I'm gonna get some weird taxes on $15.
All right. My next question is, and Dave, if you have questions, just let me know. I'll be quiet.
No.
So when creating art, we as artists, like we talked about how we kind of have a basic, a starting point, right? Like for me, it was like the starting tools that I had was just pencil, paper, and you know what I mean, a thought in my head, right? I'm an image I want to draw. Is there a basics to writing when you want to start off? Like, say you just want to jump in right now. First thing you want to get into, like art as pencil, paper, and another image. What is that equivalent or parallel for writers?
So, do you want me? You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I can go first on this one.
Okay.
So your basic starting tool, like to get started writing today, similar to illustrating, pencil and paper, and or if you live in a strange household where, as a teenager, you only have access to a laptop and not pencil and paper, something like Microsoft Word, but there's also tons of free alternatives. Google Docs. I use OpenOffice from Apache. Sort of any sort of word processing system. I will find that similarly to, well, it depends also your neurotype. If you're ADHD like me, it's a lot easier to get distracted working on a laptop where you also have access to the internet than it is if you start writing on a notebook.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say your three starting tools are going to be pencil, notebook, either a cup of coffee or tea, and also some lo-fi playlist.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll approach it two different ways, right? Just to write. Like you're not trying to get into comic book writing or script writing.
Right.
Just to write. Again, you just need the utensils to do that. That could be a pen, crayon. I recommend actually physically writing first to appreciate writing, but I also come from a different time, right? So I don't know how a person who's like a Xennial or Gen Alpha or something like that would perceive that, because they didn't grow up in a time where we started out doing handwriting classes for a long time. But I think you just need those two things, like the thing to write with, whether that's your fingers typing and a screen to see it, or a pen, pencil, and a pad. But where I think it gets more complex is you have to understand what a story is. And so that's like, I think if you want to start actually writing story and whatever, whether it's prose, comic book, whatever, you do need to have an understanding of what a story actually is, the elements of a story. So, yeah.
Yeah. If you're looking at, reading is going to be your greatest tool for a writer. Understand. You don't necessarily need to go to a class, but you need to understand how to break down the book you're reading and then learn how to duplicate that in your own way. And then when you get to writing specifics, like we'll find out about later, getting to writing comics, film scripts, stage plays, you then need to understand required formatting and editor preference.
Okay. So for artists, we have staples that we have on our bookshelf near us at all times, like within reach, right? And it can be, for me, it's framed ink. It's Ink Noir. There's also how to draw the Marvel Way. Those are books that are staples on our bookshelf. Are there books like that you have that for a fact, like as you're working on a story, as you're working, it doesn't matter if it's a comic book story or just a novel or anything like that, you know what I mean? Or like instead of short story. Are there books that you turn to like, let me reference my book real quick?
Yeah. This is for it's gonna vary depending on what you write. But for comics, this one, understanding comics, Scott McCloud, I think they teach this in school. It really is like a must read if you want to develop comics, right? And so this is the go-to, because you're not going to you're going to read it and not memorize anything in it, right? If you're me, right? And you're going to have to refer to it over and over and over again just to keep refreshing, what's in it, why you use certain panels, a whole bunch of stuff. And then there's also the 20 panels, right? That I mean, an artist probably uses that more than a writer, but a writer uses that to convey, a certain perspective in a scene, right? They could, I've seen other writers not use that kind of language at all, but I don't know. Those are my go-to when I'm writing comics. And then there's also books, again, that talk about character arc and plot. I wouldn't say that those would be go-tos for me, not necessarily go-tos for every writer. But I think if you're going to write comics, you need this, to have at least experience what's in this book in some way. So
yes, I have.
Did you hear the question, Tim?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
and I had to go run to grab the follow-up to that book.
I mean,
every comic writer is going to have this under.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, it's the same idea of like it just helps you understand the fact that you're writing for panels, you're not writing for prose.
Yes.
And because the action is going to be conveyed differently, emotions are going to be conveyed differently. Emotions are going to interject between this and necessarily intend them to be in the first place, and then that could actually elevate the scene because it's a collaborative effort. Another thing which I got, it's patented for, or it's marketed for screenplays, but in terms of understanding tension building, Save the Cat Strikes Back are really good for learning how to create stories that have impetus or movement to them. But what I'd recommend more so now, I don't recommend alongside it. It's
there's a whole bunch.
Also, if you want to know, like, if you're starting out writing, what your house will look like, I have 2 bookshelves over there. Mm-hmm. I have 3 bookshelves downstairs. I couldn't go to all of them to grab all my different books. So I went to just not over there, but downstairs I have a book called Throw Me by Benjamin Piercy. He wrote Green Arrow and a couple other books, comics as well as some other things. And his book Throw Me is about it's an essay on creating fiction, because he came from a place where he went through an MFA program where he's told us to do no genre writing, to then have a career with its all genre writing. And so the distinction for people who don't know, that means genre means action, adventure, spies, dragons, all that stuff like that. And then people say literature, non-genre fiction, that means Hemingway and people being contemplative, looking out the window for 3 pages. But he has a book called Thrill Me, which is about how do you elevate the scene by adding action and dynamics. So Save the Cat is great for like learning how to build the movement that goes into the overall like script, and then learning how to make that movement dynamic within a scene. Thrill Me is really good for that. And then of course for adding emotions to a scene, the Writers Helping Writers handbooks are super handy because they will help, break down, give you a glossary of different emotions and how those are portrayed in words or body language, things like that. So then if you're, writing a scene and you get a note back from an editor or an operator saying like this feels stiff or this doesn't feel realistic, you can compare that and say like, is the body language off? What's happening? Like, did I accidentally mix signals when I was creating this moment on the panel?
And then when you get further into it, you should look up books on dialogue. And then today, YouTube is your friend, right? YouTube and Skillshare, you can probably find almost everything.
YouTube teaches you how to do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
You probably find like tips on everything there. And for JSM the first, you should do it. If you're going to make a comic, do it. But just realize going into it, it will not be easy.
Right. All right. Well, you mentioned about genre. And so my next question is like a 2-part question. What is your favorite genre to write?
Definitely have to be, fantasy and sci-fi. It's not superhero comic, actually. I think I kind of tiptoe in the superhero zone, but my brain is more into the like fantasy or maybe post-apocalyptic science fiction kind of deal, and mixing the two, creating a hero in that, but it wouldn't qualify necessarily as a superhero in the technical sense. But I'm learning. I've written a couple superhero things.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like my first published work was a spy piece, so I need to say like spy fiction. But the most recent book that I just contracted or got in a contract for it's more so in line with like, I like things in the extremes. So it's kind of absurdist space opera, just taking, I'm not going to say ripped off Destiny 2, but I definitely ripped off Destiny 2 to an extent.
Well, like I said earlier, there's no real news story under the sun, right? So like
everything's pastiche. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I ended up taking kind of mixing mythology with science fiction and kind of creating rule sets for both that allow them to interact. I like, if you're writing a lot of weird fiction, creating rule sets to make it feel more grounded will help it not just feel like a fever dream to the writer or the reader who is just following along with like, doesn't make sense. I don't know what's happening. I'm just there's things being thrown on the panel. I don't know what's happening. But if you give them rule sets, that's all things for them to follow on. So I like rule sets and weird stuff. And when you combine them, that's my genre.
Right. Okay. So my second part to that, is there a genre type that I know, like those are what your favorites are, but is there a genre type that you'd like to dabble into?
I think I would explore horror more, only because I think that there are stories that you can tell that don't necessarily fit like the classic horror type that would generate the same type of kind of emotion or reaction. But I'm not, because that's something that I shied away from even in viewing for a long time, I'm finding fascinating pieces that are pulling me into it. Like Midsummer kind of pulled me, but I watched that. I was like, oh man, that's well written and everything.
Psychological weirdness.
Yeah, but when I think of that part of horror, it's like, man, can I write something that good? That's kind of where my brain is on that one.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. Every time I go back to horror, I like it a lot. Kind of just to continue on Kasisi's answer there. But my first couple published pieces were actually in horror, so I don't know, it's going to be that one for me. But I think I'd like to dabble in something that's perhaps a bit more non-genre or a bit more literary, which I don't know like how that would sell in a comic, but doing something that in that same way is very like, you know, Wordsworth or Chaucer, like Hemingway style of reading, but through a comic. I wonder what that would look like. So that's something I think would be interesting in exploring.
That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting. All right. Next question. So I know me as an artist, I prefer to work on my desktop, right? My office desk. When I'm doing artwork, I tend to go to my drafting table, right? Do you have a place, and it doesn't have to be like a specific desk, but do you have a place in your home that you like to work at? You know what I mean? I know like Tim, I'm guessing Tim's at his computer, but we're all at our computers and whatnot. I like to stay in front of all my work stuff because I know everything is here. Today I had the idea of going to my lanai and working on artwork, but I never did. It's not my zone, you know what I mean? So that stemmed the question, like, where do you like to write? Where do you find it most conducive to you actually like getting pen to paper, you know, words on a screen? What place works best for you in your home?
That's a really good question. I just thought, as you asked it, I thought about it really differently. I like to get ideas in one spot, and then I like to actually write them formally in another spot. So if I just want to generate ideas, I like a lot of background stuff, which is horrible for you probably, but I will sit and put like a kung fu movie on in the background or music, right? And that's noise, and it's kind of like I already know what I'm going to hear or see. I'm not really focused on that, and I can just generate ideas based on that. But if I write, I like to write right here. So if I'm actually formally doing an outline or actually writing the script, I like to do it right at this desk with, you know, multiple screens. I also, when I generate ideas, I'll use a notepad or a laptop, and I won't use like desktop to do that for some reason. But when I want to kind of write, I use a desktop, multiple screens, outline here, you know, script here, kind of deal. So.
All right, interesting.
Yeah. I am a pretentious butthole who ended up going through art school. So very much, I've continued the tradition of getting a too large coffee, going to a coffee shop and sitting in the corner with my laptop and just staring at people as I try to write.
You're just spreading the hate.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'll bring like earbuds or something in, but for the most part, I like having the background noise around me. If like, as long as no one's like talking at me, or like or things nothing's too loud, then like it's fine. I can like, you know, work stuff. I like having like it kind of similar to like if I'm working at home, I like having a lo-fi playlist. I want the kind of like that muffled, repeated sounds, things going on in the background, and also you know, the classic writing experiment that you learn in your first year of school of, you know, create a backstory for someone who walks in the door. Yeah. So if I'm working at home, then I'll set up at my change based on where I'm at in my writing process. If I'm in pre-writing or like first drafting, usually I'll work with pencil and notepad and go out to my patio in my backyard and work out there. If I'm at the point where I'm in like second drafting or further processes, then I'll end up working up on my computer and take what I've written on the notepad and put it into a word processor, and then that process essentially do a round of edits because I'm going to notice things that didn't make sense while I'm transcribing it.
Okay. That kind of leads into my next question. Is, for you, what is the best way to keep your thoughts organized? I know you guys were talking about, you'll write things down like when you're in the brainstorming phase, you write it down on paper and then, then transcribe it in the computer. But while you're still in the paper phase, or what is the best way that you keep all that stuff organized? I mean, do you keep it organized traditionally, or is that when you start uploading it onto the computer organized?
For me, if I'm transferring the idea from like the pad, like I have it's not a remarkable, what is it, a Kindle Scribe? So I email myself notes when I get to that point. Like a lot of the idea generation won't, it has to like culminate into like solid ideas. A lot of it is just like word vomit, right? And so when I get to the point where it's a solid enough idea, I kind of email it to myself. And then I'm experimenting with different methods to capture like all the collective stuff, like Trello, Notion. I've tried a couple different things to try and, when you get enough good pieces, to organize them so you don't lose like the flow of the ideas. But that basic outlines too. I've just tried a straight outline at one point just to see if that works. I do like Trello and Notion a bit more. Scrivener too, if you've used that before. Trello is probably the thing I like the most because I can put everything there. Pictures, sound bites, anything that kind of enhances the story. It's like my own little story Bible, kind of. Not fully fleshed, but yeah, that's how I kind of keep organized right now. So I have various boards that I keep story ideas on in Trello. But
yeah,
okay.
Which I promise I'll check out soon, Kasisi.
You don't have to. I've changed it a lot, so.
Yeah. I've kind of talked about this before, but my process is more involved than it needs to be, but it's just what works for me. Which my first draft is usually done in a Marvel style script, where I'll and that'll keep that as my outline, and so that'll be just breaking down like page by page. Here's what's happening on this page, and here's where we start, here's where we end. Next page, here's where we start, here's where we end, and break it down. And then just for the most part, all the artists that I've worked with, I have usually been. Thank you for your question, Matthew. We'll probably save that for the end since it's kind of unrelated. Been fans of having full dialogue presented to them. So then my second draft, after I transcribe it, we'll be taking that into a full DC comic script, panel by panel breakdown. And during that process, at some point, I'll create several docs that just go down the line. I have like a rabbit trail of folders and documents in my Google Drive. And usually when I do the series, I will do like a full murder board that I have downstairs. I have the cork board with like the pins, notepads. So that'll be like the series, the issue, and then within the issue, kind of the major beats. So not necessarily the full breakdown, but if I'm like in my early stages, I'll do the murder board, then I'll turn it into Marvel style scripts, and then I'll turn it into the full script at that point. So, and usually I'll try to do like a pretty quick turnaround to go into the full script because I don't want to keep the artist waiting because I'm being anal about it. But that's kind of my process, and I think at least with Wolf Hunter and other books I've written so far, continuity has been a key focus of it due to the nature of the story being murder mystery focused. Right. So being that I know about it has helped. Same with the book, which hopefully we're announcing in October. We have pages out, which Roland said we could announce that we have art, but I don't know yet for sure. Starts with a D, ends with an Acula.
Okay.
Yeah. But we got that coming out eventually. We have several pages penciled in ink now. So, yeah.
Okay. For the record, I'm glad I'm not the only one that calls the murder board.
Yeah.
When I create characters, that's what I piece different things, different pictures. Like, oh, I like this outfit. I like this. You know what I mean? And I'll create a murder board using that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, as artists, when anytime as a kid, you go to a convention, like, oh, how do you get so good at drawing art or doing artwork? And the one thing, like, it was always said to me, and I've caught myself saying to other people as well, is draw every day, right? It's always more than just that, but like the basic is draw every day. So my next question is, how often do you guys sit and write? I mean, I would imagine day jobs and whatnot, but how often do you plan every day to sit down for, like, you slot time for yourself to sit down, or is it just when inspiring thought hits your mind?
I would say that I write every day, not necessarily the same thing. So I'm not necessarily focused on the same project every day. Some days, especially when I'm in the early stages, like I am right now for a new project, it's really writing down what I see in my head, or writing down, what different things about the character, like what is the defining act, write several things down in that way. So I'm not actually writing a story as much as I am, again, vomiting words on the paper so that a story can be fleshed out. But I would say that there is some aspect of like building on what you're going to write every day.
Right.
But I think you do have to write very frequently to become better at writing. You have to read and write, at some level frequently if you want to get better, right? If you just want to kind of be stagnant where you are, I mean, you can probably maintain that at a certain level if you stop reading and writing, but you will always be that thing, right? I think I'm too early of a stage, so I have to do something every day in order to kind of, evolve, right?
Yeah. I mean, my advice for everyone is always to write every day. Do I actually do that? No. But I mean,
honesty. That's good honesty.
My day job, though, however, does force me to write at least every work day, and I try to write fiction on my weekends. Yeah. It's just it's different content because during my day job I'm writing marketing copy. Well, if I'm handling creative, which I don't necessarily do as much anymore, mostly I'm writing strongly worded emails to vendors about why they haven't turned in their creative on time.
Right. You have to be focus driven on that, right? So, like, I mean, that's what you're doing. That's your job. So you have to focus on this particular little section.
Yeah. But I do try to take time, at least, to write some creative, write something there, just to keep my thoughts churning. And I also always try to, approach everything from the idea of everything is a story. So, I mean, all of the creative that I write, it usually ends up being something story focused. Because, I mean, if you want some marketing advice, everyone hates ads. So how do you market today? Well, you end up telling a story that somebody can relate to, or you get tie into some sort of value that a person will purchase off of. And there's a slew of stuff there. And then on the weekends, I'll dedicate longer time for longer writing sessions. So there'll be some months where I'll do like a full month without writing, and then write 20 pages on one Saturday because I just have a manic episode. But usually then I'll have to spend a lot of time tidying that up and cleaning it. So then my Sunday is spent all on the edit babes, making sure it's actually it sounds like I know what I'm doing, and it's not just some madman raving at a keyboard. So my writing schedule is very weird and fluctuates, but it's
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I'm published. I'm at the point where I'm a whiskey burnout writer, so eventually writers will get there, but don't start out that way.
Right.
And you have to know your own personality too, right?
Yeah.
You have to kind of know yourself and what motivates you to write.
Right.
You know.
And depending on the type of writer, if it depending on the type of student you were, it could be that like 11:59 on a Sunday, that is your turn-in date, so the paper's getting done at 11:50. So like if you know that you can churn something out and it'll pass in that kind of time frame, then more power to you. Don't push it, but yeah. Know your deadlines and know how
I'm not
soon you
gonna
can
lie,
complete it.
I've done some graphic design like that, last minute design.
Yeah.
Like I get that. All right, and so my next question is, minus the fact that we have editors, you know what I mean, with working on stuff with Silverline, we have editors that we have to toss stuff back to, and then they'll go over and send it back. But doing your own stuff, or maybe not stuff that's not specifically for any editor or publishing company, do you share your writings like somewhere to get feedback from it? Like, is there a place online or a group of people where do you put your stuff out? You don't have to give me specific sites, but like, do you do it? I guess is what I'm asking.
I'm kind of growing that network specifically. So I've hired freelance editors before to look at stuff, but recently met people who are trying to get their stuff out. So I said, "Oh, hey, I'll read yours. If you read mine." And so I kind of felt, I think that is going to become a bigger thing for me, to try and reach out to folks in a kind of an exchange way, like, hey, let me kind of read yours and review yours if you read and review mine. And really good stuff came out of that. So for me, that's what I'm going to try and do moving forward, right? As well as kind of hire. I mean, at some point, I want to, when you get your stuff polished enough, and it really isn't that polished, you have to submit it to somebody whose job it is to edit, right? To be an editor, just to get that warm and fuzzy that you're on the right track in certain things. So for me, that's my that's kind of how I'm operating right now. But
yeah.
Okay.
I submit it to everyone who will give me a couple eyeballs. I try to get as many eyes as possible. So because like if you're not sure how IP law works, the more people who see your creation as it's in its production stages, the more production you actually have in court. Mm-hmm. There's no real other way to protect your work while it's still in the process of being created, other than having people see that you have put copy to paper to get that copy right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Essentially, anytime something touches paper and changes hands is when it is now a copywritten material. So if you have managed to, it's different from trademark, which is a whole other process. Right. But copyright something which is applied automatically because it's a right to the copy you've created. So I try to get that in as many eyes as possible. And also a lot of, we attract like-minded people, so chances are a lot of your friends are also creatives or in some way involved in some sort of thing. They like doing fun stuff. So usually I can then Shanghai my friends into, I don't know if we can say Shanghai anymore, into, we can't, okay. I'll co-opt my friends into reading stuff and give me notes back because a lot of them are professional cosplayers or illustrators, or they are I know one of the guys who does the street art around Portland, Oregon. So like weird creatives who will appreciate
creatives in one way or another.
Yeah. Not necessarily like I'll find a few writers, but I also want to get a lot of non-writers because I want them to like not necessarily know what's happening. I want them to like approach it from the perspective of like, I'm reading this as someone fresh and this doesn't make sense. Why doesn't this make sense? I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
Whereas a writer will say like, oh, I see what you're trying to do here, clean it up. But I want someone to like be kind of blunt and be like, no, this is dumb.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we put together. I put together an art Discord for that purpose, for people to connect and send DMs back and forth on stuff they're working on or to share projects once they're finished. So, Yeah, and then after that, I'll send it to the editor. But
Right.
usually try to.
Like everybody else has touched it, so now you can look at it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, and it's kind of weird. But if you are sending it to your friends, and, let your friends know, like, hey, my deadline on this project is 2 weeks, so I need you to get your notes back to me within a week. So,
Right. Okay.
yeah.
Are people pretty keen about like getting notes back to you, getting their critique back to you?
Yeah, usually like if I'm open honest with them about like the deadline, and if I'll try to find friends who or contacts or colleagues that share like the same interests as what I've created. So like I know people who are more into science fiction stuff. There are people who are going to send Soul 7 to. I know people who are more into horror and fantasy. There are people who going to send Dracula to.
Right.
And because it's something they're interested in and they want to support me because I'm supporting them back, usually it shakes out that they're pretty quick on the notes.
Okay. That's cool.
Also,
I do have one more question. Do you still write Christmas cards?
I have not in a long time.
I've not done one in a while,
Yeah, in a long time.
Yeah.
I'll put you guys on the spot now. Everybody's gonna be like, Sam, where's my Christmas card at? Kasisi, where's my Christmas card at?
Yeah. I mean, I think the most we do is we'll do like a digital one where we'll take a photo outside and just email everyone.
Okay, that's fair. So I have a writing friend, and he does like an end of the year like newsletter, right? That all of his friends. It's not necessarily a Christmas card. It's more of this is what has happened to me, and you know what I mean, in this year, right? And it's actually something I look forward to. Like I know that in December I'm going to get this letter, a physical letter from him that has I mean, he types it out because he prints it out and sends it to several people, but I know I'm going to get it. It's like, oh, now this is what he did. This is the conventions he went to. This is what he's doing. Like, this is what happened this year. Like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. And I always thought about doing it. Never got that far into it.
Do it. You just said it. Now you got to do it. Now you got to do it.
I know it's on the internet now. But yeah, like writing for me isn't as easy. You know what I mean? It doesn't come as easy to me, right? Like I've scripted stuff out for myself. I've done, you know what I mean? I've made my own comic book. You know what I mean? I created the whole thing and everything, but the writing part is rough. Like I can tell a picture, I can tell a story from panel to panel to panel. I can't always put the dialogue in there, you know what I mean, for what I'm trying to convey with the drawings that I do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
I think writers
I appreciate
with that too. So
Yeah.
I think most writers. Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think that's all the questions I had.
It's a lot of good questions there.
Yeah, were good questions.
Thanks.
There are a few things though. If we're talking about comic specific writing though, there are a few things we should say though.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
like if you want to write comics, really understand. Now I've seen people who don't necessarily use the format of scripting that we're kind of taught, right? I've seen some very loose scripts that go out there, but the more that you can convey to an artist in a panel and in dialogue, the better, right?
Mhm.
You have to get out of the whole they'll figure it out mode. And then the other thing, and I don't want to take too much time. The other thing I think that you need to, if you want to write comics, understand is that comics are a joint venture. It's a team that creates a comic. So in your mind as a writer, when you first start off, you have all these images in your head, right? The art should look like this, right? These characters look like this, right? And you got to kind of let an artist, you have to give them the room to express themselves and the idea, right? So if you're married very hard to something, you either need to have a lot of money to make sure that it is exactly what you want, but you probably will never be exactly what you want. or you need to be open to the strength of your story and letting an artist working with them, right? Hopefully selecting the one that you think can convey the story the best, giving them the room to do that. Right.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it comes to that. Understanding that comics have an action economy to them. You can only convey so many things in a single panel. Like, if I send the art team like a thing where a guy's running back and forth doing 5 things, they're like, well, this is a page, this isn't a panel. So understanding kind of what the national limitations of that action economy are, and then how you can use the blank space between panels to soak up movement or convey movement between panels. Understand that a lot of the action is going to happen in the blank space. Another thing is knowing the gives and takes of a good feedback system. If you're a writer, I definitely recommend you don't necessarily need to go to school, but at least go to a community college critique course or portfolio course, something like that. Just pay for that out of pocket if you want to, or find a community group to do that, because understanding how to give notes back and forth in a way that's respectful is going to be super helpful. It's kind of similar to Kasisi said, I'll be talking with an artist and they'll have an idea for a panel layout. I'm like, this is fantastic, absolutely do that. But then they'll come back I want to make this change to the character. I'm like, well, that kind of breaks elements of the story later on, so we can't do that.
Right.
So knowing work how to have those things where no, we can't change that. Yes, we can change that. That's a great idea. No, this is a weird idea. Learn how to communicate in that way in a professional manner is going to be very helpful.
And being humble, right? Your idea is never as good as you think it is.
Yeah.
It's never as good as you think it is, right? You think you got the home run. This is going to be it, right? Mm-hmm. The next big thing. And it's just not that. You got to be humble enough to let people in and go, okay, the artist can tell you things that you just don't understand. The body does not do that. You can try and do that, but the body does not do that. So maybe we need 3 panels to do this thing. Or maybe, hey, I'm going to make this another page because of what you did. Now, you as a writer, you have to make sure, right, that pans out because what the artist said is right. So now I need to adjust the story to get the right page count in. And you just have to be open to doing all those things if you're going to be, especially starting out. Now, once you're the bee's knees, right? Of course, it's going to be what you say and everybody's going to bend to make it happen in your way because you have the credibility and the experience to know that is a good story. But early on, if you really want to make a comic early on, you need to understand that you need to be humble, you need to be flexible, you need to be in a team, right? People will not necessarily do stuff for free. There are some who will, but you have to know going in, an artist's time is worth something. So what are you willing to contribute to that? Right? I don't know. Those are all things that I don't think that people fully realize until they start.
Yeah. Well said.
Not even then.
Yeah. Another lesson that a writer should learn once you move into the comic space is how contracts work and how you want to contract things out. If you have a decent enough savings set aside that you want to pay an artist page rate flat out for them to do work, understand you're going to be paying an artist to make your comic. That's the way it is. If you don't have it set up, then you need to look at a collaboration request and getting a contract set up where say if we take this to funding or if we take this to market, this is the split we're doing, and then here's a contract that essentially we both signed. This is what's happening. If you're an artist, understand you're not getting more than 15%. I don't care who you are, or if you're a writer. I mean, if you're an artist, make sure you get your 70. But if you're a writer, you're understand that you're getting the shorter percentage because you need to negotiate for the rights to the story and the creative, because it's your story, so that you can sell it in perpetuity. The artist may not necessarily. The artist is probably just doing that to get their page right and move on to the next project. But if you're a writer, you can create a contract that says I take 15%. If it's just one other artist you're working with, then they get 85. If you're working with an illustrator and ink and color or however that works out, then 70-10, the splits down the line
breaks down.
Yeah. understand your illustrator is going to get the lion's share out of the comic regardless. It's that way up until Marvel. I think even the Marvel setups, their illustrators get 50%. But you get those story rights, so then you get the rights to then take that file to the printer as many times as you want, get your bulk rate, so then you can sell them at conventions or online for a profit.
Right.
Yeah.
And then last thing, I know I'm talking a lot, but last thing, please, I'm going to circle back. You may think you understand how to tell a story, right? But please, really focus on what are the elements of a story and how do I tell it? And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it the exact same way as somebody else. But there are basic elements. Like even if you just said, hey, I know that I don't necessarily have to do the 3-act structure, but to understand how to tell a story, I'm going to try and tell a couple stories with the 3-act structure. I think that it will help, because even when you understand that, you're going to evolve and try and understand better how to tell a story. It is not as simple as folks think it is. So again, be humble, be willing to learn. A writer is always going to come under fire when it comes to a story. So just be able to say, okay, take that feedback for what is constructive and just move forward. Even non-constructive feedback is feedback. So you got to kind of understand how you want to process that feedback. But really, really, really understand that this is a marathon when you try and learn how to write, just like being an artist. And you are not going to be Muhammad Ali right out the gate. No, even if you're very talented, you're going to have like, hey, a voice maybe when you write out, maybe, but you're not as good as you think you are. Always work to be better than you are, right? That's me. That's Kasisi Harris. Okay, I'm going to step out. Go box, put away.
As an artist, even going to the Cuber school, we still had to take a writing class, so that as an artist, you understood, the fundamentals of building a story, building a scene, building what the character goes through. Like we still had to take a writing class. That's how important writing is. Like, yes, anybody can just put paper to or pencil to paper and whatnot, and just blurt a bunch of stuff out, but the good writers do their research, they do their background, they do their their tutorials, they do their their educating. You know what I mean? They get that in. So.
No, everything's a game of hours, and you're gonna be cutting your teeth for a while.
Yep.
Just know that for every crap page you do now, you're gonna make one great page after you get past day 100. Yeah, it's
right.
And even like I said, like all those things I made back in middle school, high school, it'll never see the light of day. That still get pages like that now, but now I know the skills and tools to go back and refine that page to make it something that I can be proud of. So, your key skill sets you're going to learn are going to be a lot of, okay, this is crap. Why is it crap? How do I fix this? Especially, that. Everyone thinks that wishes for like the ability to go out to a cabin in the woods, drink a bottle of gin, and write a magnum opus. Usually doesn't work like that.
Right.
But you will probably get a lot of pages, and they don't need to edit a lot of pages.
And don't be afraid to do that too. As a writer, make sure that you are not afraid to edit your own stuff multiple times. Again, if you're just expecting that, seldom you hear about, I think Rocky was written that way. Doesn't Sylvester Stallone say, I just spent 18 hours and wrote the script that night? Like, you are not that person right now. So just realize you're probably going to have to write 5 different versions of the same story. And still, you may not feel 100% comfortable, when you're early on in your career. But that 5th one hopefully is a lot better than the first one. And you just need to understand that it takes that, right? It takes polishing a thing to make it beautiful, not just letting it, go out there. But yeah. Okay, I'm done. I promise.
We did have a question from Matthew. Yeah, we have a question from Matthew earlier. What sells better, a recurrent series or a one shot? Which, if you're planning your first ever comic series, understand what kind of story you want to tell. If you're an independent and you're a relatively unknown independent, what's going to sell the most is a completed trade paperback. Or complete volume.
People want a complete story.
Yeah. And that's not just like your publisher is going to want that for the first time. Your audience is going to want that for your first time. If you're depending, like, you get lucky with an independent setup where they do like an annum rotation, like with Wolf Hunter is on, where it's like once a year or something, you get an issue or something like that. That's something different. But usually you're going to want to create a trade paperback for your first ever thing. That being said, they want to label first issue of Stars as a one-shot because it's a self-contained story. So there's a couple ways you can go about that. Is it going to be, if it's self-contained, is it going to be part of the ongoing story? If your plans to eventually do an ongoing story, if it is, then make that an issue 1. Keep that as a floppy. Create the trade paperback, and you can sell them both at cons because people come in, pick up the $5 floppy. Yeah.
Right, or do it if it's not 20-some pages. You know what I mean? Do it as a 0 issue. Zero issue, like a little one-contained story, and that's just to introduce your characters, introduce your story and your world.
Absolutely, that's my other suggestion. If it's not part of the main continuity, make it an issue 0, sell it for a couple bucks, and have that as like your have that as your dime on the house. So when people come back and get their bag, which is the trade paperback, the first one's free, the second one costs, but the third one's cheap. If you get that reference, how's rehab?
I will say, if you've never actually produced your own comic before, though, I guess I learned the hard way. Do not just delve into like, I'm going to do this 48-page thing. Realize that, it costs. I would actually start out and try and see if you can write something that's like 2, 4, 6, 8 pages, right? Something really small to make sure that the artist is on board, right, for the whole time. It sucks when you start out a project and you're on page 8 of 22, right? And then all of a sudden the artist doesn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So you need to find a different artist. That sucks, right? So I would say, if you've never done it, make sure you go through the pipeline and have experienced that before on a very small scale, so that you can kind of understand the approach to a bigger scale. If you've already done it before, you got it drawn.
Yeah.
But yeah, go through and finish it and get it like put together in a product, right? And he drew the art. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So if you have that, finish it and put like a fork in it, and then I would say attack bigger, right? But finish it, put a fork in it, make sure it's done, it's out regardless, right? It's your first work. Like, get it out, and then attack something bigger that you want to do at a con.
Yeah. I'd say if you got a 20-page thing that's done, it's ready to go. That's when you can start approaching, like, is this going to be part of a big continuity? Is this going to be a 0? Or is this going to be a 1? And then from that point on, work with your artist and figure out what your schedule and your contract is going to be like to do the trade paperback from that point on. Because very likely that's the trade, once completed, that's going to when people want to buy from you, is when they can pick up all 4 or 5 issues at once and get their story.
And ask for feedback. Ask for feedback from if you make the book and you sell it or pass it out or whatever. Ask for feedback. Put your email in there, or an email that you have associated with the comic or with the company you have, and you know what I mean. And I guarantee you, people will write in. Like, I've had people write in about one of the books I worked on, letting me know what they thought about it. So people are willing to offer, any critique.
Yeah. And
then that can let you know as well whether or not I'll just leave it as a one shot, or maybe I should continue it on as an ongoing.
Yeah.
And or even cut it like down to like maybe not an ongoing series, but maybe a 4-issue miniseries. Or if I just want to tell this story, you do a 4-issue, do a 6-issue, do a maxi series. You know what I mean? Just, you don't have to commit to like a 5-year, 20-year Alex, Savick Spider-Man story.
Yeah. Yeah, like as have the conversation with your artist, like, do you want to do the entirely independent route, or do you want to go through a larger publisher? because it, like, even like Image or Tales and AD wants you to have a complete 6 issues to turn in as one book. But you don't necessarily need to do an ongoing season point on it, because I'll do, like, do you guys want to do another 6 issue run after we run this, or is this it? And you can be like, yeah, we want to do the 6 issues. That's what I want to do. That's the book. Yeah.
Right. What can your creative team commit to?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Uh,
Well, I appreciate you guys answering my questions.
Thank you for asking them. That's pretty good. Yeah.
yeah.
It was our turn to berate you, or not berate, but interrogate you guys. You guys interrogated me and Dave. So
Doing a Kickstarter and maybe Diamond distribution. Okay. So yeah, you can absolutely do just kickstart the first issue once it's, you know, fully baked, ready to go. Get your testers back from the print. Understand that Diamond Distro similarly wants a complete book. They want to know that so many months in a row they'll have something they can send to previews and send to shops. So that'll also be something where you'll probably be kickstarting, like, you know, depending on your schedule, maybe like if you guys got nothing going on, once every like 6 months. If you unfortunately have to suffer through life like the rest of us, maybe once a year, do a new issue, get those 6 things completed, and then package it as a series for Diamond to put out with the trade at the end. And then if that works out
that's
well,
a bit of legwork as well.
Yeah. But then hopefully that should mean the Kickstarter will cover your printing costs, but then you end up where you'll be making your money, unfortunately, is several years down the line in those 7 months of packaging handled through Diamond.
Yep.
Comics is a weird economic model that we're still trying to figure out.
Right.
Yeah. We had it in the 80s and then it broke and it hasn't been fixed since.
True.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
David, did you have any questions?
No, I've been listening to, you know, a lot of the stuff that Jose brought up, so I've been kind of taking a lot of the stuff in. Just things that I was thinking about was, you know, when I know you do the murder board, you do, you know, the layouts on that, but when you've got something where you're, you know, thinking about a project or something like that, do you start going through and, you know, pitching a sequence of it where you say, you know, oh, okay, well, this may be something that, you know, sounds really cool, you know, say you're doing a one shot and you're thinking about maybe the third act or something like that, and you kind of develop that, or do you try to step back, you know, and like you said, the Marvel way of, you know, let's just throw out, you know, this page and this page and this page thing, or do you basically sit there and, you know, kind of build around a central idea and expand out from there, typically? For
me, I build up the idea and make sure that there's a story there first. I think that's the hardest part, is making sure that you actually have a story. Like, ideas are very cool and worlds are very cool too. I get caught up in world building all the time, but I have to make sure there's a story first before I ever start to, like, actually formally formulate that, whether that's an outline, you know, the actual, if I like to write panels first and then go back and do dialogue to kind of get the story visually out, and then write the dialogue. And the dialogue is what probably takes like 12 edits because I suck at dialogue, right? But that I don't actually murder board. I've worked with the same artist for several years, and so we communicate through the panel description, and he kind of takes that, and I trust him to build that visually. So I don't usually, you know, work out panels. I don't do a murder board to put. Trello is probably the closest thing I have to a murder board, if that makes any sense, because I got pictures up, but I'm not like doing the continuity of this is a timeline or this is the area where these folks meet. It's kind of like in a description. So I don't go that far into it, but I do like to just vomit ideas, put them in a situation, understand if there's a story there or who the main character is, and over time that even shifts when you start to get those ideas out there. You realize the main character you had, it's not really interesting, but this side character should really be the main character type scenario, and then you kind of formulate that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do everything from a story approach. Use my lineup story, nice. Matthew, we already kind of talked about getting feedback earlier, but like Jose said, on that first issue, where you plan distributing it, create a free Gmail, put it somewhere in there. Like, don't use a personal one, use a create a new one, and ask for feedback anywhere you distribute it. Literally, shotgun as many people you can. Put up free copies on your personal Facebook for your friends and family to look at. Anything. When I'm creating a new idea, it depends on the idea and where it's coming from. Because I'll get some stuff where it is my own idea, some stuff where I then get asked to create the script for a book that I was not my creative impetus behind. I was like, an illustrator created it or something like that, and like, we need a script. Which also, if you're a writer, you didn't know this is a thing that happens. Sometimes illustrators like, I have an idea, I need someone to script it because I know I can't script, so that's how I can get work. But usually, if it's something that's my idea, I have the most X-Files cryptic notes at the start that like my note for Still Send It was hard science Roman space god.
Yep.
And that just sat in my notes.
Little did you guys know, Tim moved to this particular room because he has carvings on the walls of script notes that everywhere in the other room.
But then the murder board doesn't necessarily go into like hard character details. That goes into movements. I'll think of everything as like a beat sheet, and that's how I track my movements back and forth. How the movements play out. And then I'll do, depending on the process there, if I already have an artist that I'm working with, at that point, after we do the movements, is when we'll actually have a conversation to talk about designs, and we'll do that over the phone. We'll both be taking notes, things like that. If there's no art already, then I'll move straight to doing the pre-write and the write-up, which creates the script. And in those scripts, I try to be as detailed as possible, include like Pinterest links, anything I can to get information across. But usually, I spend a lot of time focusing on the movements and making sure that there's a dynamic back and forth that'll keep people engaged. And if something doesn't make sense, can we explain it in a way that makes sense? Like something I learned about writing spy fiction is that a lot of it is explainer one-offs. Like, there's a lot of spy stories that if you like just approach without, like, if you got rid of like the little explainer sentences, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy makes no dang sense. But you include the right explainer things in the right moments, and just I spend a lot of time in the pre-write working on that, and then I'll halfway through writing issue 2, I'm like, oh, this character should be married to this character. I've got to change that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another question I had was, when you just kind of preface this, like I said, I've been reading the Hidden Years, so it's been a lot of Byrne stuff. And when I look at reading an issue of Byrne's work, for example, versus reading some of the stuff nowadays, some of the new stuff is what I find is I can, when I go back and read Byrne stuff, it's very heavily dialogued. I mean, you look at a panel, and if you do a word count, there's huge word count. But then I look at a lot of the current stuff, and a lot of it is like you can fly through the book because there's very low word count. When you go, this is for both of you, whenever you go and you do it, are you setting yourself up for like certain larger word counts, or is it just you're flowing with the project and the project, maybe the project is, just flowing through the pages. Because sometimes when I see some of the stuff, I go through and say on the burn, it's like, I know when I'm going to read that, it's going to be pretty involved. It's going to be long. It's going to be time consuming. And then I may go to a different book that's just, I can knock it out in a few minutes, and switch and go on to do something else. What is your, your target, your thing for, how much content you put in versus, what you prefer versus, is it following the story, etc.
For me, on average, I like to, the sweet spot for me is 6 panels. So I kind of want to average 6 panels, but it really depends on what's happening in the comic for the panel count. But that panel count kind of dictates how many words you should have in a panel. So at about 6 panels, you should have about 35 words, right? But again, you could break that rule. I mean, it depends on a lot of things. It's just I tend to not want a lot of words in it because I want the artist's work to kind of show through. So the more panels I create, the less detail. I mean, unless they get really creative with how those panels are laid out in the book, I just try and not squeeze them into conveying, especially if they're really big kind of action that I want to contain in a panel. I don't want to put a lot of panels on that page because I know it's kind of hard for them. If it's not like a little simple thing, it's kind of hard to convey a thing with the more panels that I have. But the most I think I put on a page is 9. And I think when I did 9, it was a fight. So we really didn't have a lot of
you wanted to show a lot of movement, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's me. So my sweet spot is around 6. I feel bad if I have less than 6, unless it's like a splash page or I'm conveying like 2 big things that I want a lot of art in. But yeah.
I will, depending on the thing, if I'm actually doing like something that's like fast paced, I'll try to like set for 5 panels because like it is like a wham bam page, like things are happening, move on. But just to the nature of written, ASL Senate will be different, but with the nature of written with Dracula and Wolf Hunter, things need to be ready for the story to happen because there's a lot of mental that is happening in the story. And so understanding how that needs to play out, because I can't, it's not a novel. I can't necessarily monologue prose, but the artist and I can work together to create the effect of a montage or to allow for like a panning scene in a monologue. If you played Final Fantasy, you're familiar with that. Where I'm a big fan of off-panel continued bubbles or using a lot of caption spaces. Like we had one thing where I used 14 panels because like I want to do this as a fresco. I'm like, you do you, Doc. You're gonna have this text line going down the center as the fresco wraps around. It's gonna be like this.
Wow. 14 panels on one page.
Why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that to yourself?
They're like, hey, there's a lot here that I want to do, and I want to include a lot of micro expressions. I'm like, hell yeah. So that was a thing that happening. But then Soul Ascendant's gonna be it's fast paced action. Things are happening. Like, well, it'll take a second to explain Roman mythology or science here and there, but for the most part, it's people trying to kill each other. What's next?
Right.
So that's going to be smaller panel counts with bigger spaces for grandiose imagery and things like that. And we'll include, and then we'll need to, because of that, we can't essentially let words dominate the comic like we can with like a spy thriller. You then need to be more mindful about your highs and lows, because also if it's just all action sequences, then it's Fast and Furious 6 and no one cares.
Yep.
But if you have a strong high that pulls into a tight low where you're having an emotional moment, things being portrayed, explained, stuff being established or set up, the next high is going to be even more impactful. But it'll give you that space to include your text so you can actually tell a story. So you can give the artist room to draw the story and you to write the story. And it should be a cooperative experience. It should feel like everything makes sense and flows naturally. That's why I spend so much time on movement and dynamics.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And remember to write in splash pages and double page spreads for the artist, because that's where they make money where they sell original art. You know what I mean? That's the money pages are there.
Yeah, just do the double page spread. I don't know, man. This guy stabs the dude. Have fun.
Right. Page 1, splash page. Rest of the book, double page spreads. Last page, splash page.
Yeah, like I said, it's just for me, going through and looking at a lot of this, I see, like with Burns' work in particular, I see a lot of words per panel, like a lot. Most of the panels are balloons that are up, 20, 30 words plus. And then, a lot of the other stuff I see, it's like there's almost no word or panels with, nothing, just kind of set that up, and there are ways to tell stories and you can break them up. I think a good example to the counter for the burn is if you remember the old Marvel G.I. Joe 21, which was the story of Snake Eyes, where the entire story had no words. So
I was gonna say, wasn't that the no dialogue?
That was a no dialogue.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do it. It was just, you have completely different styles. So that's why I was kind of, curious on the way that you prefer to do things and all that. So, okay. So I think I'm pretty good.
Yeah, Marvel's Conan the Barbarian had the same thing.
Yeah. But we're coming up on our hour and a half, so.
Kirby asked, can you guys link your books? I believe our Silverline page is currently in the process of being redone still, so I don't know if the storefront is up yet. So I don't know if I can get, also the indie plant is also currently being restructured. So I don't know if we have storefront pages for our comics again, or if they're still being worked on. We'll have updates for that hopefully soon. But I did look up Wolf Hunter #1 on Comic Book Realm and found that my variant cover is currently selling for $20. So that's cool.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
So if you want to
nice.
Pay more money than the what I expected to pay going through an auction site. Have fun, kid. Find the eBay link. Yeah, it's sold for $18 on eBay apparently, so that's cool. So hopefully we'll link for our books here soon. But I do have. You can also go to I believe it's timtkwriter.wordle.something over. That'll link you to my publications page, but I have not updated that in forever. That's where all my short fiction is at.
Yeah, if you're on Global Comics, you can just look up KDBH Comics, and you can see all my stuff for free.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'll say also underrated tools for beginning writers. r/comic book collabs. I'll talk about it until the day I die. Great subreddit. You'll be able to find a lot of people who are just coming out of school. You guys want to work, and it's organized in a way that you can find people looking for page rates or people looking for collaboration. Collaboration is the legal term for when there's no money up front. It's the contract to get paid afterwards.
Right.
Look at people willing to do webcomics, because then you're only doing 5 panels, 8 panels at a time. So it's a lot easier to kind of cut your teeth on what the writing process looks like. I've heard that Webtoons has some shady stuff going on with their payment system right now and their contracts. So do some research where you want to go, but you can also get paid for doing webcomics and stuff like that. If nothing else, look at doing a Patreon. Okay. Any other thoughts or notes before we end tonight's show?
No, I'm good.
Yes, I'm good. I appreciate you guys answering all of the questions that we had, including chat questions and whatnot. There's a lot of information there that, as me as an artist, I think benefits me to know what the writer's process is as well. You know what I mean? Because then you can just factor that into your work. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll be back next week. I believe we have a topic. We got the calendar pulled up. But also make sure to check out Wednesday Night and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on those respective days. Next week we're talking about how to collaborate on a comic. So not just the contractual setup, but also what does the communication process look like?
Mm-hmm.
How many emails are being sent back and forth? How do you handle notes? Things like that. So we hope to see you there, 8 p.m. Pacific time.
That'll be a good one. I'm excited for that one.
That'll be good. Yeah. All right. So we'll see you then. But until next time.
All right. Make mine
Silverline.
Oh,
Hi, I'm
Chris Olm. I'm the former editor-in-chief of Malibu Comics. Make mine Silverline.